The depths of the sea expanses. In a world untouched by human hands, where the sky's mirror lies beneath the waves, there existed a place known as the sea expanses. The vast oceans stretched across the horizon, reaching beyond what even the sun could touch. Below the surface, far from the light of the stars and moons, a world of wonders and dangers stirred, ruled by creatures ancient and wise. The Shimmering Citadel. Deep in the heart of the sea expanses, a grand city of coral and pearl sprawled beneath the waves, glittering with a light that came not from the sun but from the bioluminescent creatures who made their homes within its walls. This was the Shimmering Citadel, the center of the underwater world, a kingdom ruled by the merfolk. The merfolk, with their sleek, scaled tails of emerald and sapphire, moved with grace unmatched by any other being of the deep. Their hair flowed behind them like silk in the currents, and their eyes glowed with an ancient wisdom that few on the surface could comprehend. At the center of the citadel, atop a throne of carved coral, sat Queen Srafina. Her silver hair shimmered like the moon's reflection on a calm sea, and her crown was woven from the finest kelp, adorned with gems from the deepest trenches. Srafina was not just a ruler but a guardian, chosen by the sea itself to maintain balance between the ocean's diverse inhabitants. Around her throne stood her council, a gathering of mermaids, each with unique gifts. There was Nerida, the songkeeper, whose voice could calm the fiercest storms and bring peace to even the most troubled souls, Lorlia, the tide weaver, who controlled the ebb and flow of the waters, and Melis, the keeper of secrets, who alone could communicate with the mysterious beings who lived in the darkest depths of the ocean. The Sea Serpent's Awakening. While the merfolk lived in harmony, not all of the sea's creatures were as peaceful. Beyond the Shimmering Citadel, past the kelp forests and towering coral reefs, lay the Abyssal Trench, an unfathomably deep chasm where sunlight had never reached. It was said that in those depths, the ancient sea serpents slumbered, creatures of immense size and power, older than the oceans themselves. For millennia, the sea serpents had remained in their deep slumber, their long, coiled bodies resting upon the ocean floor, their scales harder than the toughest shells, their fangs like ivory spears. Legends told that the sea serpents were once guardians of the ocean, protectors of all that lived beneath the waves, but they had retreated to the depths after a great battle with the surface dwellers in a forgotten age. One fateful day, the waters above the Abyssal Trench began to stir unnaturally. It started as a tremor, a slight disturbance that went unnoticed by most, but then the tremors grew, and the water above the trench churned violently. From the shadows of the trench, a single massive eye opened. Then another. And another. The sea serpents were awakening. The call of the deep. Queen Srafina felt it first, a ripple through the currents, a shift in the tides that no one else seemed to notice. She summoned her council and spoke the words that sent a chill through the hearts of even the bravest mermaids. The sea serpents stir. Nerida's eyes widened. But they have slumbered for eons. What could have caused them to wake? It matters not what caused it, Melis whispered. What matters is that they will rise, and the world will never be the same. Srafina closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the ocean in her veins. We must prepare. If the sea serpents are to rise, there will be a reckoning. The merfolk prepared for war, though it was not their nature. Warriors were trained, ancient magic long forgotten was summoned, and alliances were sought. The fish tribes, colorful and swift, were called upon to scout the waters. The vast schools of angelfish, barracuda, and manta rays swept through the sea, their movements forming intricate patterns in the water as they communicated news from the farthest reaches of the ocean. The sea serpents were not the only threat. As the creatures stirred, so too did the monsters of the deep. The Kraken, long thought to be a mere myth, moved through the trenches, its many tentacles brushing the coral, sending a warning to all that the old ways were returning. The Alliance of the Deep. In these dark times, the Merfolk sought help from allies who lived in the hidden crevices of the ocean floor. The Fish People, known as the Thalassans, were one such group. Though their appearance was fearsome, sharp teeth and eyes that glowed in the dark, they were wise and had ruled over the trenches of midnight, a labyrinth of caverns deep beneath the ocean, for centuries. Their leader, King Thala, was a proud, ancient being with skin like black stone and eyes that burned with the fire of the earth's core. "I will fight alongside you," Srafina King Thala agreed when the queen petitioned him. "But know this, if the sea serpents rise, they will not fight alone. Other ancient powers will awaken with them." Farther still, the Merfolk ventured to the sunken forests, where the Leviathans roamed, giant, whale-like creatures who communicated in songs so low and deep they could shake the ocean floor. These creatures, though peaceful by nature, would lend their strength to the coming battle. Yet, the greatest ally of all remained hidden. The Forgotten Ones. Beneath even the abyssal trench lay the Forgotten Ones, creatures so old and strange that they had never been seen by mortal eyes. These beings, neither fish nor serpent, were said to be the first children of the sea. They existed in a realm of pure darkness, where the pressure of the water could crush the strongest bones, and yet they thrived. Srafina knew that to defeat the sea serpents, she would need to call upon the Forgotten Ones. It was a dangerous gamble, for these ancient beings were neither good nor evil, they were simply beyond the comprehension of most creatures. Their power was great, but their motives were unknown. With Meles, the keeper of secrets, Srafina journeyed to the deepest part of the ocean, where the light of her crown barely pierced the gloom. They entered the realm of the Forgotten Ones and made their plea. "We seek your help to stop the sea serpents from destroying all we have built," Srafina called out into the void. There was a long silence, and then the water around them shifted. From the darkness, shapes began to emerge, vague, formless figures, with eyes like distant stars. "You seek balance," the Forgotten Ones replied, their voices like the crashing of waves. "But balance is not the way of the sea. The sea is chaos, and chaos must reign. But without balance, all will be lost," Srafina countered. The Forgotten Ones were silent once more, and for a moment, Srafina feared they would be consumed by the dark. But then they spoke again. "Very well, Queen of the Merfolk. We shall aid you, for now. But know this, when the time comes, the sea will take what it is owed." The Battle of the Abyss. The day of reckoning arrived. The sea serpents rose from the abyssal trench, their massive bodies coiling through the water, their scales reflecting the faint light of the distant surface. They were magnificent and terrifying, their roar shaking the ocean itself. But they were not alone. The armies of the sea were ready. The Merfolk, with their gleaming weapons and powerful magic, stood alongside the Thalassans, the Leviathans, and the fish tribes. From the darkest depths, the Forgotten Ones emerged, their alien forms moving silently through the water. The battle was fierce, with the sea itself raging as the serpents clashed with the defenders. For every serpent that fell, another rose, and it seemed as though the oceans would be consumed by war. But in the end, it was Queen Srafina who stood victorious. With the power of the Forgotten Ones at her side, she struck the final blow against the Serpent King, driving him back into the depths from which he had come. The aftermath. The sea was quiet once more, though it would never be the same. The Merfolk returned to their city, and the Thalassans retreated to their trenches. The Leviathans sang songs of peace, and the fish tribes swam freely once more. But deep in the ocean, the Forgotten Ones remained, waiting. They had helped to restore balance, but they knew that balance was fragile. One day, chaos would rise again, and the sea would claim what was hers. Queen Seraphina looked out over her kingdom, knowing that the peace they had fought for would not last forever. But for now, the sea expanses were calm, and the merfolk could swim freely beneath the waves, their tails glistening in the shimmering light of their undersea home. Chapter 2: The Echoes of the Abyss. Years had passed since the great battle, and though the sea remained calm, the shadows of the past lingered beneath the waves. Queen Seraphina ruled with wisdom and strength, guiding her people through the aftermath of the war with the sea serpents. But the queen knew that peace in the sea expanses was fleeting. The Forgotten Ones had not asked for anything in return for their aid, yet Seraphina knew that their patience was not infinite. In the shimmering citadel, life resumed its natural rhythm. The coral streets bustled with merfolk, their tails flashing through the water as they went about their daily lives. The fish tribes continued their patrols, ensuring that the delicate balance of the ocean remained intact. The thalassans had returned to their trenches, keeping a silent vigil over the darkest parts of the sea. And the leviathans swam freely once more, their deep songs echoing through the currents. But there was a restlessness in the waters, one that only the most attuned could sense. Far to the east, near the edges of the sea expanses, a disturbance had begun. Strange currents pulled at the tides, and creatures who had once been peaceful were now behaving unpredictably. Whispers of forgotten powers stirred in the depths, and the old fears of what lay beyond the horizon began to resurface. It was on such a day that Seraphina's daughter, Princess Thalassar, swam to the surface. Unlike her mother, who had always felt the pulse of the ocean as her guide, Thalassar had a yearning for the open sea, the place where water met sky, where the unknown beckoned beyond the boundaries of her realm. Thalassar was beautiful, with flowing emerald hair and eyes like the deepest parts of the sea. Her curiosity was as boundless as the waves, and she spent many hours exploring the forgotten corners of the ocean, seeking out ancient ruins and hidden treasures. But today, she was searching for something else, answers. As she breached the surface, the air was crisp and cool. The horizon stretched endlessly before her, a vast, unbroken line where sky and sea met. Thalassar had often wondered what lay beyond, in the far reaches of the world. Her people spoke of the surface dwellers, humans, they called them, but they were nothing more than stories, creatures who lived their entire lives on dry land, never knowing the vastness of the oceans. But Thalassar knew there was more to the stories. She had heard the old legends, the ones her mother rarely spoke of, about the time when the surface dwellers had come to the sea expanses in great ships, and the ancient sea serpents had risen to defend their realm. The war had been long and terrible, and the merfolk had sealed themselves away, ensuring that no human would ever set foot in their waters again. As Thalassar gazed out at the open sea, a chill ran through her. Something was coming, something that even the currents could not predict. A storm was brewing on the horizon, not of wind and rain, but of something far more dangerous. The arrival of the Wayfarer. That night, the ocean stirred with an unnatural energy. The waters around the shimmering citadel swirled and churned, and a faint glow appeared in the distance, an eerie light that grew brighter as it approached. The merfolk gathered, murmurs of concern spreading through the city like ripples on the surface. Queen Seraphina stood at the gates of the citadel, her face calm but her eyes filled with uncertainty. She had felt the disturbance long before anyone else, and now, as the glow came closer, she realized what it was, a ship. But not just any ship, a ship of the surface world, crewed by humans, something that had not been seen in the sea expanses for centuries. The ship, named the Wayfarer, was a vessel unlike any seen before. Its hull was sleek and dark, carved from wood unknown to the merfolk, and it moved through the water with an unnatural grace. Its sails were tattered and torn, as though it had weathered many storms, yet it glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. As the ship drew closer, Srafina signaled for her guards to be ready. The fish tribes gathered, circling the ship like a living barricade, while the merfolk warriors armed themselves with spears and tridents, their eyes wary. But the Wayfarer did not attack. Instead, it came to a gentle stop just beyond the reach of the citadel's gates, floating quietly on the surface. A lone figure stood at the helm of the ship. He was tall, with windswept hair the color of storm clouds and eyes that glimmered with the light of distant stars. His clothing, though worn and tattered, had the markings of a captain, and around his neck hung a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "I am Captain Arian," the man called down to the waters. His voice was strong, yet there was a sadness in it, a weight that came from years of hardship. "I come not as an invader, but as a messenger. The world above is changing, and I seek counsel with those who protect the depths." Queen Srafina swam forward, her presence commanding. "No human has set foot in these waters for many lifetimes. What has brought you here?" Arian looked down at her, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and weariness. "The sea called me, my queen. And it is not just your sea that is in danger. There are forces at play that threaten both our worlds. The balance is breaking." Srafina's heart skipped a beat. The balance. It was a word she had not heard since the Forgotten Ones had whispered it into the depths. She had feared that the fragile peace they had fought for would not last, but she had not expected it to unravel so soon. "What do you mean?" Srafina asked, her voice calm, though inside her mind raced with questions. Arian sighed, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "The sea has changed, and not just here. In the far reaches of the world, great storms are rising, ones that no man can control. Creatures long thought dead are stirring in the deep, and lands that were once fertile are being consumed by the waves. The surface world is beginning to fracture, and I fear the same is happening here, below the waves." Srafina narrowed her eyes. "And what do you propose we do?" Arian met her gaze, his expression grave. "There is something ancient, something older than the sea serpents, stirring in the depths. I believe it is the Forgotten Ones, creatures who existed long before our worlds were separated. If we do not act, they will awaken fully, and neither your realm nor mine will survive their wrath." The queen's blood ran cold. She had feared this moment, but now that it was here, she realized she was unprepared. The Forgotten Ones had agreed to help in the last battle, but they had warned her that chaos would return to the sea. Now it seemed their time had come. "Why should I trust you?" Srafina asked, her voice sharp. "Humans brought destruction to our world once before. What makes you think this time will be any different?" Arian's expression softened, and for the first time, he looked truly weary. "I do not ask for trust, only that you hear my plea. The surface world is not the same as it once was. My people have forgotten the old ways, the balance between land and sea. But I have seen the signs, the same signs your people must have seen. The storms, the shifting tides, the creatures that should not be stirring. Our worlds are connected, and if one falls, so too will the other." Srafina remained silent for a long time. The weight of her responsibility bore down on her, heavier than the deepest waters. She knew that Arian spoke the truth, for she had felt the same currents pulling at the edges of her realm. But could she risk trusting a human, after all that had happened? Finally, she turned to her council, her voice steady. Prepare the Leviathans. Summon the fish tribes. We will send scouts to the abyssal trench and the deepest parts of the sea. If the Forgotten Ones are stirring, we must know before it is too late. She looked back at Arion. For now, you will remain here, under watch. If you speak the truth, Captain, then perhaps there is still hope for both our worlds. But if you lie... Arion bowed his head. I understand, my queen. I seek only to help. As the waters calmed once more, Seraphina felt the weight of the sea pressing down on her. The echoes of the abyss were growing louder, and she knew that the peace they had fought so hard for was crumbling. The Forgotten Ones were waking, and this time, they would not be so easily appeased. In the depths, the ancient creatures stirred, their formless bodies shifting in the darkness. The sea, once calm, was ready to reclaim its power. Chapter 3: The Gathering Storm. The waters of the sea expanses were restless, and with each passing day, the ocean's depths seemed to darken. The merfolk could feel the undercurrents shifting, a sign that something was changing in the very fabric of the sea. Queen Seraphina stood on the balcony of her coral palace, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon where the ocean stretched into the unknown. Despite her regal poise, a deep unease had taken root in her heart. Captain Arion, the human wayfarer, remained under watch in the shimmering citadel. Though the merfolk treated him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion, he had become an invaluable source of information. His knowledge of the surface world and the troubling events taking place there filled in pieces of a puzzle Seraphina had been dreading to confront, the rising power of the Forgotten Ones. Princess Thalasar, Seraphina's daughter, had become intrigued by the human. She found herself drawn to his stories of the world above, the strange lands and skies her people had only heard of in tales. Against her mother's orders, Thalasar often ventured to Arion's quarters, her curiosity overpowering her caution. She had questions no one else dared to ask. On one such occasion, she found Arion standing by a large window made of enchanted glass, which held back the sea while allowing its light and beauty to shine through. He seemed lost in thought, his gaze distant. You often stare at the horizon, Thalasar said as she approached, her voice soft. Do you miss your world so much? Arion turned, a faint smile on his lips. I miss the wind, he said after a moment. The way it feels on your face, the scent of the earth after rain. But there is something in this place, something ancient and powerful. Your world is not like mine, but it is no less beautiful. Thalasar moved closer, her emerald hair flowing behind her like the currents. You speak of the Forgotten Ones. My mother fears them, and rightfully so. But what are they, truly? Even in our oldest stories, there is little we understand about them. Arion's expression grew grave. From what I have gathered, they are beyond understanding. They were born when the world was still forming, older than the sea serpents, older than even your people. They are forces of nature, beings of pure chaos. They have no interest in the affairs of mortals, land or sea. But now, something has woken them. Thalasar's brow furrowed. And you believe this imbalance between our worlds has stirred them? Arion nodded. I do. The surface world has grown reckless. The storms are unnatural, more frequent, and more violent. Islands are disappearing, entire coastlines eroding overnight. The seas are rising. What affects the surface will affect the depths, and the Forgotten Ones feel the change. They thrive on chaos, and the imbalance is like a call to them. Thalasar remained silent, contemplating his words. She had sensed the same disturbances in the waters, the fish behaving erratically, the strange currents, the eerie stillness in places that were once teeming with life. But she had never considered that the surface world might be linked so closely to the fate of her own. Suddenly, a sharp knock interrupted their conversation. One of the Queen's guards entered, his expression grim. "Princess Thalassa, Captain Arian, you are summoned to the council chamber. The scouts have returned from the abyssal trench." The warning from the depths. In the Grand Council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Queen Srafina sat at the head of the table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Around her were the members of the Merfolk Council, Nerida, the Songkeeper, Lorlia, the Tideweaver, Melis, the Keeper of Secrets, and various other leaders of the underwater realm. The air was thick with anticipation as the scouts, led by a warrior named Talias, entered the chamber. Talias was a veteran of many battles, his scarred body a testament to the dangers of the deep. His face, however, bore a look of grave concern that unsettled even the seasoned council members. "My Queen," Talias began, bowing deeply. "We ventured to the abyssal trench as you commanded. What we found confirms our worst fears." Srafina's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Speak, Talias. What did you see?" Talias took a deep breath before continuing. "The trench is stirring, more violently than before. The sea serpents have retreated deeper into the abyss, but they are not alone. Shadows, creatures I have never seen, move through the darkness. They are vast, formless, and radiate a power unlike anything we've faced. They do not attack, but their presence has driven the other deep-sea creatures to madness." A murmur swept through the council. "The Forgotten Ones." Melis, the Keeper of Secrets, spoke next. "Did they communicate with you?" Talias hesitated, his eyes darkening. "In a way. They did not speak in words, but in a presence. It was overwhelming. They are waiting, watching. I felt it, like they are expecting something." Queen Srafina's grip tightened on the arms of her coral throne. "And what of the Leviathans? Did they sense anything?" Talias nodded. "The Leviathans sing of a coming storm, a great upheaval that will reshape the ocean itself. They do not know if it will be war or something worse, but they believe it is tied to the surface world." All eyes turned to Captain Arian, who stood quietly at the side of the room. His presence was a reminder that this crisis extended far beyond the sea expanses. Srafina exhaled slowly. "The balance is breaking. The Forgotten Ones stir, and if what you say is true, Talias, they will not remain dormant for long. The surface storms and the chaos in our waters are connected." Lorlia, the Tideweaver, spoke up, her voice laced with concern. "If the Forgotten Ones awaken fully, there is no force in the ocean or on land that can stop them. They will not be swayed by words or alliances. They are not like the sea serpents. They exist only to undo what has been done." Arian stepped forward. "Then we must find a way to restore the balance before it's too late." Srafina regarded him for a long moment. "And how do you propose we do that, Captain? You say the surface world has caused this chaos, and yet your people have never been willing to listen." "There may be a way," Arian said, his voice calm but firm. "There are ancient devices, hidden in the deep, that were created long ago to maintain harmony between land and sea. They were forged in the time before the worlds were divided. If we can find them, we may be able to use them to appease the Forgotten Ones." Melis's eyes narrowed. "These devices are dangerous. They were lost for a reason. Arion turned to her. Dangerous, yes. But if we do nothing, the Forgotten Ones will awaken, and the sea expanses, the surface world, and everything in between will be consumed. Seraphina's gaze hardened. And where would we find such devices? Their existence is nothing more than legend. There is one place that holds the key, Arion said quietly. A place that lies beyond the borders of the sea expanses, the Maelstrom. It is said to be a vortex where the sea and sky meet, where time and space collapse. The devices were hidden there, in a place no mortal has dared to enter. A stunned silence filled the chamber. The Maelstrom was a place of legend, a swirling storm that no one had ever returned from. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Seraphina stood, her regal figure towering over the room. We have no choice. If we are to survive, we must retrieve these devices and restore the balance. Thalassar will lead the expedition, with Arion as her guide. Thalassar blinked in surprise, but she bowed her head in acceptance. Prepare the Leviathans and the Tideweavers, Seraphina commanded. We will face the Maelstrom and reclaim what was lost. For if we fail, the ocean will be our grave. And so, the quest began, a journey to the Maelstrom, where the fate of both the sea and the surface world would be decided. The storm was gathering, and with it, the whispers of the Forgotten Ones grew louder, echoing through the depths.